to live stream 46 in our space shooter DevVenture. So in our last session, we were talking about adding the pattern itself into the data that's passed through the layers, right? So from the strategic layer down, it should specify what behaviors constitute a specific pattern. And we had asked Perplexity if it was possible to include that that array of behaviors in their sequence as part of the pattern through the so-called data channel or the data dictionary, right? And so the answer is yes, we can. You can include the behavior sequence in the data dictionary that's passed between your layers. This is both practical and extensible, and it keeps your system modular. And most importantly, we already have the infrastructure in place. We don't have to add anything new. So that's good. We just have to extend what we already have, which is perfect. So yeah, how does it work? When the strategic layer assigns a pattern, it can include a new key in the parameters dictionary that gets emitted. And this sequence is then delivered to the NPC behavior manager, which can store or manage it, executing behaviors in order as the patterns complete. Just switching on my fan there. So your current signaling method is very flexible. You can pass any well-structured data through it, which is amazing, right? And then it gave some examples and how we could use it in the NPC behavior manager. What are the key advantages? Concrete suggestions for the implementation, summary table, all kinds of information, which is really cool. And then we went off into the GDScript file, and we wanted to see, okay, well, now that we have that confirmation, how are we going to implement it, right? So in the enemy ship controller, we've got all these signals that are no longer being used. Declared but never explicitly used, never used, never used, never used. So they're all just never used. Warnings about things not being used, which is okay. We can keep them and use them when we need them, right? Just ignore the warnings for now then. Now, I want to go into so in Perplexity, it recommends in the parameters dictionary, but where in the parameters dictionary? When assigning a complex pattern, we have this variable pattern sequence, which has these behaviors listed. So that's really interesting. What that means now is I could create a dictionary at the top of the enemy ship controller called the patterns dictionary. And what that means is I can create pattern names, right? And that would be the key. And the value associated to that pattern name would be the array of values, right? And that is so interesting. It's better than defining each pattern linearly down the file, you know? So yeah, okay, let's do that. So I want to go back here to the top of my enemy ship controller file, and so we've got these signals, we've got export variables. Okay, let's do it here. We'll add something here and we'll say, oh, that's not hash. So this is, okay. The dictionary defining the various behavior or the various patterns with their behavior sequences and here we'll go maybe on ready. Or is it just variable? Okay, for now we'll just say variable and we'll call it patterns, and this is a dictionary. So we'll say this is of type dictionary, and it is assigned the values it's an empty dictionary. I wonder if we can do this. No, it has to be there. Fine. So for this one, to make it more readable, we'll have to just ignore the columnar setup and just do this instead. Okay, so inside this patterns, we're gonna have to have several the word I want to use. Several pattern types, right? So we'll have an attack pattern, and we'll have you know what? As I think of patterns, I'll add them in. So we'll call the first one attack, right? And it's a key colon value, and then separated by a comma, right? So this will be the key, which is called attack, and it's gonna have an array of behavior names, right? So we'll have seek, followed by shoot, followed by flee, and that's your first pattern, right? And now what we can do is we can instance, or rather not instance, but index our patterns dictionary every single time we want to send parameters dictionary through the data, right? So here in Perplexity, as you can see, pattern assigned dot emit enemy ship ID, and then okay, here we go. So parameters, what is the target node, what is the pattern sequence, and continuous equals true. So here's what I'm going to say. I've thought of a more interesting way of handling the behavior sequences per pattern. I created a dictionary at the top of the enemy ship controller class, or enemy ship controller.gd file, called patterns. This dictionary will use the pattern name as a pattern name of type string as the key, and the value is an array of type string containing the behavior names. In order of execution. Here is the code snippet showing what I mean. Each entry in the patterns dictionary becomes a new pattern, and this index can then be used in the parameters dictionary, parameters/data dictionary each time. My only concern is that the lower layers will not have access to the full dictionary. So how can we ensure they will receive the full sequence, the full behavior sequence each time? Will parsing just the indexed array work? Right, so parsing just the indexed array will work, and your patterns dictionary idea is a good one. Because arrays and dictionaries in GDScript are reference types, you can safely take the array at patterns indexed at pattern name, and then put it in the parameters dictionary, and the lower layer files will see the full sequence content. If you want to protect the original from modification, you can send a duplicate instead. So for your use case, keep the master patterns dictionary in enemy ship controller. When assigning a pattern, look up the sequence there and attach that array or copy into the parameters you emit with pattern assigned, and then NPC behavior manager then reads parameters and pattern sequence or something similar and uses it to drive behavior execution. You don't need a separate carriage medium, just include the sequence array in the existing parameters/data dictionary. Excellent. So then we're sorted, okay? That's wonderful. Now I want to go back to the GDScript file and see what it's talking about with this pattern assigned. Where is it now? Here, pattern assigned. So we want to find the pattern assigned signal, I suppose. Here, pattern assigned, and then parameters dictionary. So where is this parameters dictionary? So parameters dictionary is not set up. So we need to look for where pattern assigned is emitted. And I don't see anywhere in this file where it is being... Oh, here we go. Emitted. Never mind. Parameters, target position, waypoint ID, move enemy to random waypoint. So here we can go into this, and we can literally just say seek, right? So here, let's try this. Let's try it. Why not? Right? So find waypoint, and what it takes in is an array, and all it does is say seek, right? So at this time, it's just gonna say seek the waypoint, right? And that's all it's gonna do. It's gonna call seek. So where I say pattern assigned down here, it's gonna emit from parameters the target position, the waypoint ID, and patterns at index find waypoint. Here, pattern okay. So the target position is this thing, the waypoint ID is that thing, and the pattern is this pattern, right? So what we can actually do here is move the pattern up to the top, because this is the most important thing. We want you to use this pattern, and here's any additional data you need to help you in that execution, right? So that's that. And now when we say pattern assigned dot emit enemy ship ID, seek, and parameters, you know, I'm starting to see some redundancy here. Seek is not a pattern. Seek is a behavior. And I just want to go back to the top here where it says on the signal pattern assigned, the pattern. It's got an actual pattern, which is a string. And that string could just be the key into our patterns dictionary. This is exhausting. To have to think about all of this all the time is exhausting. It's so frustrating when, yeah, okay. And perplexity is not exactly helpful with this, is it? I can give it the entire body of code for the enemy ship controller, and it's gonna miss something like that, because of course it is, right? It's just an AI, and it's really my responsibility to make sure all of this stuff works. So so it's going to be, when a pattern is assigned, it's going to be who is the pattern assigned to, what pattern is it, and are there any additional parameters that are required. Okay, so I need some water. All right. When the pattern is assigned, how do you check if how do you see a pattern's connections again? I see. So it's actually not a string, it's a string array. Please bear with me while I try and figure all of this out, and I do apologize for going quiet for a while there. I just needed to concentrate really hard to try and revise all of this code and see what's going on, right? So if I go back here, let me explain this to you. We've got this signal. It's called pattern assigned, and what it's currently doing is it's taking in the enemy ship ID as an integer, the pattern as a string. Bear that in mind for now, right? That the pattern is currently set up as a string, and then the parameters dictionary you know what? I think it actually should be that the NPC behavior manager needs to manage the sequence of behaviors. It needs to know the sequence of behaviors. So why don't we move the behavior, or rather the so-called pattern, the patterns dictionary, we move that into NPC behavior manager instead, and then use this string as the key into that dictionary. So it's like when it calls seek, then find the seek pattern and execute that array's behaviors. I think that will work better. Now that I've had the chance to go through my code a little bit and figure out all the things that we worked on before, and then revise it, because it's been quite a while since I've revisited this section of code. Excuse me. So yeah, okay. But again, I digress. So let me go through everything and then we'll talk about it. Okay. So there's this thing called pattern assigned. It takes in the enemy ship ID as an integer, a pattern as a string, and the parameters dictionary, right? Which is just a dictionary of any potential parameters that the pattern might require. Okay, so that's the way that it's working at the moment. And if we go into the NPC behavior manager, right, then we've got in the ready function, we've already set up that the pattern assigned signal is connected to this on pattern assigned function. And here it is defined over here, on pattern assigned, takes in the same parameters, right? So the enemy ship ID, the pattern as a string, and the parameters dictionary. And then it says if the enemy ship ID is the same as enemy ship.id, right, then execute the pattern. And so now we go into execute pattern. And over here, we try and do a match, right? So we do match with pattern. And if the pattern happens to be seek, then activate the behavior seek and pass in whatever parameters, right? Now, this is fine if, and only if, the pattern only has one behavior, right? And that's currently fine. That's all it is, right? It's just one behavior. But what happens if we're doing a complex behavior like this attack pattern, which has to do seek, shoot, flee, seek, shoot, flee, seek, shoot, flee, and break when the thing is defeated or can't be found anymore, right? So this is where this particular setup no longer functions. It doesn't work anymore. It can't scale. It's only a single behavior pattern. And that might be fine, right? If I'm just trying to see now, because if we just use the dictionary of key value where the key is a string and the value is an array of strings, that also won't work. It's also not scalable because now you're calling seek and then shoot and then flee, but there are no parameters being passed in. So it has to be a dictionary of dictionaries, unfortunately, right? Where the key is the pattern name, and the dictionary is this is so frustrating. The dictionary is the sequence of behaviors that need to be called, right, in order, right? And then the key for that dictionary, the inner dictionary, would be the behavior name, and then the value would be an array of parameters. So for seek, in the case of seek, we want to do something like this, right? Where you're calling seek with the target position, the waypoint ID, and I'm gonna take this out because we don't need it, and then save the file. Right, so you got the target position and the waypoint ID. So which the global position, does it need the global position? anyway. You're passing in these parameters that seek will require, right? So if we go down into behavior seek has a function called seek target, and the seek target function takes in nothing. It's just delta. But on activate, here we go. It's got the enemy ship ID and the behavior parameters dictionary. If parameters has target position, then set the target position to this. And if parameters has a target node path, if it doesn't have a target position, then find the node path of the target and get its position that way. Otherwise, we call the behavior complete, that it failed because it couldn't find the target, right? So this is right. This is cool. This is interesting. And deactivate just says set active to false. Set is active to false, and print out the message that seek behavior has been deactivated. In the process function, if it is active, so this is just the sentinel if statement to make sure that is active and enemy ship are true. If they aren't, if any of these are not true, it cuts out of the process function immediately, right? So assuming that these are true, then do these things, right? So get the distance to the target. If the distance is less than a certain amount, we've completed our seek behavior because we've come into range or we found the thing or whatever, right? And then behavior complete.emit is active is false, call return, and then seek target delta. So there should actually be a separate operation, a separate behavior, my mistake, not operation. It's still an operation because it's the operational layer, right? But there should be a separate behavior that isn't seek, because seek is go until you reach a point, right? And we should probably change the behavior name from seek to something else. So it's no longer seek, it should be something like home or chase. Maybe not chase. Okay, we'll keep it as seek, right? But there needs to be another behavior that is similar to seek, that works the same way, but uses a separate threshold that isn't this, right? Unless maybe we have a parameter that we pass in. We could do that. We can extend the behavior for seek so that it uses a parameter like is attacking or something. And if it is an attack pattern where you're trying to get into range, then the distance to target that we are checking for needs to be much bigger than just 2, right? Because 2, you're basically smacking into the object, whereas when you want to be in range, you're not that close. You want to be far away, so you have time to shoot at your target and then get out of the way before you smack into it, right? So much more than 2. And we're going to need to make a check in this process function here to say if this is part of a larger pattern, right, that involves some type of shooting, then we need to make that modified behavior, and so we'll have to check for it. Oh, that's a lot. I think I need to start recording all of these things that I talk about, because I just say things and then I don't actually end up doing it by the end of the live stream, and then we forget and just keep talking about it. The cool thing with DeepSeek that I miss is that DeepSeek would actually go ahead and write the code for you. So you could just you could just put it into the right spot and not have to actively go and write the code yourself. And you know, maybe I'm lazy, maybe I'm not being lazy, but I do miss it, because for one thing, I'm not forgetting anything when DeepSeek's writing the code for me, but with Perplexity I am, and that's kind of harming our progress. So I do actually take exception to that. So okay, let's go back to the NPC behavior manager and modify this, right? So now we want to go back to the top here, and we want a surgery. Want to perform a surgery here. We'll just transplant that variable and move it into the NPC behavior manager. So if I go into this one at the top here somewhere, we'll just paste it down here, boom, and then give 3 spaces to separate the variables from the signals, and the signals from the functions, and each function from the other functions, right? Just 3 lines of separation makes a nice clean file. And now we've got these 2 behaviors, right? Now I need to check instead, in the match pattern, okay, I'm starting to think that maybe I should be working on this off camera. And the reason I say that is because our progress is not fast enough. We're not getting far enough. And all I end up doing in these live streams is talk about something and then implement a small amount and then come back the next day and forget everything we've talked about. And that's not the way to do things. And we're not making any progress because of it. So what I want to do now is I'm going to start planning all the work that needs to be done, and then I'm going to start working on that whenever I get a chance. And then in the live stream, it will literally just be, let's continue with whatever I'm busy with for that hour, and then carry on after the live stream again. And so it will literally continue being DevVenture with MTK, right? But it won't be the full DevVenture anymore. So if this is not what you want, if you don't want this new suggested style, then let me know. But until you do, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to keep going this way until someone says, hey, by the way, MTK, I preferred it when you did everything in the live stream so we could see all the work, right? And not just snippets of the work. So do let me know, right? In the comments or whatever on Discord, go ahead and let me know if you do want to keep the way we've been doing things, or if you are willing to try this new method. And if it works out, then let me know about that too, right? So the whole point is I don't just want to provide a good live stream experience. I also want the project to move forward faster, right? Because at the moment, we are still laying the foundation of the game. And that I can appreciate is not the most exciting part of game development, okay? So I want to get through this phase as soon as possible so we can go on to the more exciting things, right? Like sound design and level design and user interface design, 3D modeling and animation, particle effects, game feel, narrative, all of these amazingly interesting fields, right, that we haven't even touched on. And, you know, we can't do any of that until we've created a base on which, like a solid foundation on which we can build it. So I really do, I really think that this is the most important phase of game development, and it deserves my full attention before we start anything else, right? And I appreciate that there are a lot of you who are interested in game development, but not the coding and development, like software development side of things. And therefore, I want to take that off the camera and do it in the background and come back and show you maybe some progress every now and then whenever we do the live streams, right? And we continue working on it in that live stream session, but you'll see that we're making more progress because I'm moving faster in the background. I don't have to explain things all the time. I don't have to take breaks from the work and come back later, because live streams really do they take a lot more from you than you'd think, in terms of, like, it's a lot more taxing than you'd think. So coming back to the work and forgetting what you've done and trying to remember what you did and all of that stuff, especially if you are having a really busy day and you're not at your best, it's difficult. But enough about that. I don't want to be a complainer. So let's try and get something done here, okay? Now I wanted to make this dictionary. Where is it now? Here. Instead of making it an array, I wanted to make it another dictionary, right? And so let's go ahead and do that, right? Will that work? Will it work? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it might work. If I make so what I'm thinking about is setting the find waypoint pattern to be a dictionary that calls the seek behavior as the key, and the value is an array of type string that takes in, or maybe not a type string, but an array definitely that takes in all the parameters for the seek operation, right? Now when you call it, discover behaviors, here we go. It's got behavior seek and behavior shoot. Behavior seek has the behavior seek script. Okay, so here's the thing. No matter which way we go about this, we're going to have to change something. And it's not a small change, it's going to be quite a big change. Okay, now I'm just trying to find out which change fits the best in our current setup, so that later we're not going to come back and dig up everything and replace it all the time, because I don't want to have to keep reworking the foundations all over the time, like all over the place all the time. It's just it's yeah. I think you can tell it's really frustrating, and it's also extremely taxing, because now I have to think about all the different layers, how they fit together, what are the consequences of changing this, where is it going to destroy everything, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, so okay, you know what, let's ask Perplexity. Okay, so I'm gonna take the pattern's behavior and move it back into the enemy ship controller, and there's a reason for that. I'll explain in a second. And go to enemy ship controller and say Control Z, save. Okay, we've done that. Now I want to copy this and put it into Perplexity. Here is the code for enemy ship controller .gd. And here is the code for NPC behavior manager .gd. Do we need to copy that over from here? And then we need to go here and say, and finally, here is the code for behavior underscore seek.gd, and then obviously copy that over too. And behavior should be behavior shoot.gd. Okay. I have a problem with how the NPC behavior manager .gd code is handling assigned patterns. The new way, or the way we want to implement pattern assignment, allows multiple behaviors in a single pattern. The current implementation only supports mono behavior patterns. I've been trying to figure out a way to improve the existing logic to support multi-behavior patterns, but I'm struggling to get a good implementation and I would appreciate your help with this. You're right. The current NPC behavior manager only supports one behavior per pattern, or mono behavior. To support patterns like attack, which is seek, shoot, flee, you need the tactical layer 2. Store the whole sequence for the current pattern, execute behaviors one by one, and then move to the next behavior when the previous one completes or fails. Below is a minimum, or rather a minimal, focused way to extend your existing design to support multi-behavior patterns. So what are the changes required? You need to add 3 core concepts to the NPC behavior manager. A behavior excuse me. A behavior sequence for the current pattern, a pointer or an index to the current pattern to the current behavior in that sequence, and logic in on behavior completed to either advance to the next behavior or finish the pattern. And the enemy ship controller just needs to pass the sequence in parameters when assigning a pattern. So for the pattern, you could literally just say the key, and in the parameters, you could just pass in the value, right? So patterns at key, patterns at pattern. And hopefully, if pattern is a valid key, it will produce the array of behaviors. But yeah, that's okay. We'll get there. We'll get there. Just follow the process. Trust the process. It'll work out. Okay, guys. So here, what changes are required? You need to add the 3 core concepts which we listed. So we have to have a behavior sequence for the current pattern, a pointer or an index to the current behavior in that sequence, and we need to have logic in the on behavior completed, which will either advance to the next behavior or finish the pattern depending on where in the sequence we are and what the terminating conditions are for the pattern, right? Because the pattern could be cyclic. In this project, in this game, in this system, we can have a cyclic graph. It's not necessarily the best in all cases or in general to have a cyclic graph, especially in computer science. Cyclic graphs are usually not the best. But in this case, we kind of do need the cycle. We need to have that cycle. It's a loop, and therefore it has to be a cycle. Forget about that. Let's carry on. The enemy ship controller just needs to pass the sequence in parameters when assigning a pattern. Okay, so enemy ship controller, pass pattern sequence. When assigning a pattern, look up its sequence in patterns and pass it in parameters. For an example for an attack pattern could be somewhere when you decide to attack, instead of emitting seek directly, use this for testing. For example, function test attack pattern. If enemy ships.size is 0, then return. We have no more enemies, so we can't tell them to attack, right? And then variable enemy ship ID colon equals enemy ships.id, and variable pattern name is attack. If patterns has pattern name, so if patterns has an attack pattern, then create a variable called behavior sequence, which is a new array, and assign it patterns pattern name dot duplicate. So we protect the master pattern, right? And then we create a new dictionary for parameters. We give the pattern name, which is pattern name, the behavior sequence, which is the behavior sequence, and any other shared parameters like target node, position, etc. And then we print the debug statement and emit a signal, pattern assign.emit, enemy ship ID, pattern name, and parameters. Otherwise, we push an error and so on. And you can keep move enemy to waypoint or move enemy to random waypoint as find waypoint, which is mono. Or you could also convert them to use patterns with find waypoint the same way, right? And then NPC behavior manager, manage behavior sequence, add these new properties near the top. Current pattern, current behavior, available behaviors, current sequence, sequence index, and shared parameters. And then update on pattern assigned to store the sequence and start the first behavior. Function on pattern assigned. If enemy ship ID is not the same as the enemy ship's ID, then return. And then here's some code, a helper function to start the current behavior in the sequence, and some more code. You no longer need to match the pattern inside execute pattern for multi-step patterns. Instead, the pattern name is mainly a label and a behavior sequence. And you can keep execute pattern as a thin wrapper or a route everything or route everything through on pattern assigned. For clarity, you could even remove execute pattern and call start next behavior directly as above. Then you update on behavior completed to advance the sequence. And then there's some more code. Keep the cancel logic mostly the same. You can remove or simplify check status if you fully handle status inside. Behavior scripts are nothing major to change. And where are you now? Or rather, that's exactly what NPC Behavior Manager now consumes. Just ensure they use completed or failed as status strings consistently. So where you are now, the enemy ship controller defines pattern templates like attack, which has seek, shoot, flee. And when assigning a pattern, it passes behavior sequence via parameters. The NPC Behavior Manager stores behavior sequences and pattern names and runs behaviors in order, advances to the next behavior when one completes, fails the whole pattern if any behavior fails. And this gives you a working multi-behavior pattern system while reusing almost all of your existing architecture. And if you share how you plan to trigger the attack pattern, the next step is wiring that trigger and testing with debugs, with debug print statements to confirm seek, shoot, and later flee runs in order. Okay, so yeah, we have basically come to the end of the hour now, and as you can see, we've not gone anywhere, not really. We've done quite a lot of talking, and Perplexity has done quite a lot of code production for us now at the very end. We haven't gone through all of it, we haven't digested most of it, but here's the thing. Like I said before, I want to try and do this off screen and come back in the live stream and just pick up where I was, you know, regardless of whether that was I stopped at the end of the live stream or I carried on after the live stream and moved forward. I'll just be resuming when I start the next live stream. And this is how we'll go. We'll just keep going, and I'll just keep pushing on screen and off screen until the foundation is done. At that time, we can reevaluate things and say, okay, now do you guys have FOMO? Do you guys have FOMO about this? Do you want to be a part of everything I do? Or do you want me to do more of a devlog style system where I continue working and you guys just join me periodically in the live stream and we share that time together? and then I continue on my own again for a while. So yeah, do let me know, please. I would appreciate your feedback. And a shout out to Cubes. Thank you for your support. And for everyone else, thank you very much for your time and your attention.